Hello and welcome to EcoElsa. Teachers, parents, have you struggled with taking your kids outdoors because of all the teachable moments that can occur outdoors and all the interruptions and distractions? Well, coming up, we'll be going over a couple of methods to make it easier for you to handle teachable moments outdoors so that you can incorporate them into your class and get your kids outdoors. So when teaching outdoors, there are a lot of distractions and interruptions that can occur. For today's video, we'll be only covering teachable moments. So what is a teachable moment? A teachable moment is anything that provides a great learning opportunity for your students. They come in many different forms and they're very hard to anticipate. But here are three common ones, when teaching outdoors at least. The first more common teachable moment is a surprise animal or plant guess that you didn't know you were going to see for sure when you went outdoors. The second is your students wanting to have further discussions on some topic that you are covering and they really want to talk about it more. And the third is exploring. Your students are really taking their own learning by the horns and they're exploring and they're really diving into something that maybe you weren't coming outside to learn about, but it's providing a great learning opportunity for your students. Teachable moments are very hard to anticipate. Before you start going, I'm going to start making plans for all the teachable moments, just know that those are only three common ones and that you aren't going to know what teachable moments are going to happen until they're already happening. And then you're going to have to make a couple of decisions. So the reason why teachable moments are hard are because of two reasons that we're going to cover methods for so that it'll be easier for you to handle teachable moments and incorporate them into your class outdoors. So the first reason why teachable moments are hard is because of tying them back into your lesson. So when you go outside, you have a lesson or a curriculum or something in mind for why you're outdoors to learn with your students, and it can be very hard sometimes to tie teachable moments back into what you are teaching about that day. The big thing to keep in mind with this is that you're going to get better at it with time, with practice. It's hard to find a way to tie in everything into what you're learning about or to plan ahead of for this. So just recognize the fact that you're going to get better at this as you keep practicing and doing it. So here's a kind of example for you though. Say you're outdoors to teach and learn about Native Americans that day, and all of a sudden you're surprised by a group of deer. Well, hello there. A way to handle this to tie it back into the material is to enjoy watching the deer for a couple of minutes with your students and then maybe ask them some questions about what they observe about the deer, maybe some hypotheses they can come up with about the deer, and then from that ask them a question about maybe why the deer were important to Native Americans. You have a discussion with how they provided a food, maybe some of the other resources that deer provided for Native Americans, and then you use that to segue into your next topic or your next activity with Native Americans. See how very simple and smooth transition it was? You addressed the teachable moment, what it was. You ask some further questions, and then you asked a question that ties it back into the material, and then you go on to your next thing that you're covering in class. Now, take a deep breath. Not every teachable moment is going to go as smoothly as that, especially in the beginning, when you're not sure what you're going to encounter and how to tie things back in material. And sometimes, honestly, there's no smooth transition for tying a teachable moment exactly back into the curriculum that you're covering. Sometimes the whole purpose of a teachable moment is that it's just a good learning opportunity. So say you're with your students, you're having a discussion about plants, and all of a sudden there's a red-tailed hawk flying over your group. What you do is you take a moment to talk about the hawk, observe it, make some observations, maybe make some hypotheses, and then just move back on to your next thing in plants. I can't even tell you right now how to tie a red tail back into your plants class. I'm sure there's a way of doing it, but I can't think of it right now on the spot. And that's okay. As we talked about last week in our last video on handling student questions outdoors, learning is a process. And sometimes a part of that process for you as the teacher is taking a step back because you're not going to be able to handle the teachable moment as well as letting your students lead the discussion, or letting them just explore a little bit longer, or letting them enjoy the moment and make observations about the animal or the plant for themselves. The thing to keep in mind with this is just because you're stepping back and you're facilitating more than you're lecturing, is that this is where the second part of managing teachable moments comes in, which is the time management. So when it comes to managing the time for when teaching outdoors, a good thing to keep in mind is that scheduling in some flex time for teaching outdoors is a really great way to give yourself a head start. So you schedule in 5 or 10 minutes of extra time in case one of your activities runs a little late, or in case one or two of these teachable moments occur while outdoors. The plane! So as you know as a teacher, sometimes the best made plans don't go according to plan, or maybe you know this from watching Scooby-Doo, and you're going to have to finagle time a little bit, or your activities, to fit in with the teachable moments. So another thing to keep in mind is saying how many teachable moments you allow yourself for a class, and maybe letting your students know this as well, that your class will only have, when you're outdoors, 1 or 2 teachable moments a day, and that's fine. Thing to keep in mind though with teachable moments is make sure you're picking the ones where it's not likely to occur again in the future. Especially when animals appear out of nowhere. If you have a fox appear in your class, that's really super cool and special. And you can't be like, oh, sorry, Mr. Fox, we have about 5 minutes left of this discussion. Could you just reappear in about 5 minutes? That'd be great, okay? Like, you can't do that. So you need to make sure you're taking these teachable moments for what they are. They're a great learning opportunity, and maybe for that day at least, it's more important for you guys to observe the fox or explore the fossils that your students found a little bit, and then move on to what you're outside to learn about. The big thing I want you to keep in mind though is that just because you're only choosing to address 1 or 2 teachable moments, that you're not squashing all the other teachable moments. Students get really excited when they're learning outdoors and when they're exploring and they're seeing and hearing things for the first time. So if you're like, oh yeah, that call you're hearing, it's just a woodpecker or it's just a squirrel, you know, you're going to maybe inadvertently crush your students' curiosity a little bit, and they're interested in learning about something more. So just because you don't have the time for a teachable moment doesn't mean you can't quickly address it in a way that it won't disrupt your class, and it'll allow that student to keep learning and take learning by the horns by themselves. So this could be something like, I don't know what that noise is in the tree. Even if you do know what it is, just say it. Oh, I don't know what that thing is in the tree. Maybe what you should do is make some observations, and then when you get back to the classroom or when you get back home, research it a little bit, look up about it, and come back and tell me what it was you discovered and you found. This way, you're encouraging them to continue learning about it, but in a way that's not disrupting your class, especially if it's happening while you're hiking between locations for your class. Once again, it's hard to tell your student, okay, watch the thing in the tree, but also listen to me lecture about something totally different. You'll have to handle it in a way that makes sense for you and makes sense for your class. I understand that there's only so many hours in the school day and that there's a lot of different standards and things that you need to cover with your students, but using these teachable moments can be a great way to make memories with your students that last and actually tie back into material that you're covering that will help them learn a little bit better, or will help them build a foundation to continue learning on later in life on their own when they don't have a teacher, or maybe they don't have a teacher who takes them outdoors. The very last thing I want to leave you with is that when you're teaching outdoors, there are going to be a lot more teachable moments that occur than in the classroom, because there's a lot more uncontrollable things that can happen, and distractions and animals and plants of their own minds. So just understand that any time you spend on a teachable moment is not a waste of time. The very definition of a teachable moment is something that provides a learning opportunity for your students. And so if you address the interruption in the correct way, the teachable moment in the correct way, that your students are learning something, it's not a waste of time. In fact, it could help them further learn more about material and can tie it in better to class later on, that they actually remember it better. Teachable moments can also help with building relationships between you and your students that makes them respect and trust you more as an adult figure in their life, which is a really great and important thing, a part of being a teacher. We have an opossum. Here, hang on. Well, speaking of teachable moments, I'm really excited. Oh, no, no, no. Okay. So speaking of teachable moments, right here while I'm filming, we got a little opossum crawling around and eating. Now, what's really cool about opossum is that they are the only marsupial here in North America, versus places like Australia. Most of the animals in Australia is a marsupial. Little chunky monkey. Yeah. A lot of people can be afraid of these guys because they think they have rabies, but the fact is that opossum actually eat a lot of things in your yard that you don't like. Things like snakes and spiders and ticks. So they eat ticks, and ticks are a vector for diseases, and it's really great that they'll eat those for us. Oh, there's our little guy. Yeah. They're actually really pretty clean animals too. In one of my previous positions, one of the interpretive animals at a place I worked were opossum, and they actually were pretty funny eaters. They would smack their lips, and sad thing was though, once they got a little bit older, their eyes would bulge out. So here's a perfect example of a teachable moment. It's not often you see these guys in the daylight like this, at least not for me. I usually see them at night around the bird feeders and stuff. So this is pretty cool. I suppose it is getting a little bit darker out though. I thought I kept hearing something while I was doing my video. Yep. Big thing I want you to keep in mind here is I'm not super close to the possum. See, I'm all the way up on a hill bluff up here. The possum's all the way down here. So I am not disrupting what the possum is up to. Okay, back to our regular scheduled programming. So thank you for taking that moment to enjoy the teachable moment with me with a little opossum running around in the woods. Unfortunately, that is all we have time for today. So, teachers, parents, or students, please comment below or tweet me at ElsaLatecki and share one of your favorite teachable moments. It can be indoors, it can be outdoors, whatever it is, I want to hear about it, and I'd love to share some of mine with you as well. If you liked this video, please subscribe below to receive more videos like this from me. Otherwise, I post new videos on Wednesdays to help you take your kids outdoors. So, as always, I hope you have a fantastic week. You be safe, learn lots, have fun, and get your kids outdoors. Bye!